All right, friends. So we just finished talking about abstract works of art like Kandinsky's down here. But today we're going to focus on landscapes in art. So my question to you is, how is a landscape different from a portrait, a still life, or an abstract work of art? Well, we just studied abstract works of art. So we know these are lines, shapes, and colors, and they're not really of anything that we see in real life. A portrait, like this example here, the artist Friedrich, is a painting of a person. You can also do a painting of an animal, and that would be an animal portrait. And this last example here, you see, it's of a vase with flowers and some fruit on the table and a cup. That's called a still life. And that is usually painted inside, where the artist puts a bunch of objects together and then paints them. So as we know, a landscape is different in that, yes, you could have a person in a landscape. You can have flowers in a landscape, but a landscape is of nature and a painting that we would do of outdoor items, okay? Where this, yes, flowers come from nature as well as fruit, but it's a painting inside, okay? All right, so we're going to focus on some other landscapes, and I want to focus more on winter landscapes since we are now in the season of winter. And this is a winter landscape done by the artist Caspar Friedrich, and he was from Germany, and he was born in 1774, so more than 200 years ago. And he traveled to the northern part of Germany, and that is a country in Europe. And when he went there, he did lots of winter landscape paintings of trees and clouds and mountains. There's a lot of mountains in Germany. This painting doesn't really show mountains, although it looks like it could be up high in the hills, and there's mountains in the distance. And it's called Dolmen in the Snow. And I didn't know what a dolmen was when I discovered this painting. So do you know what a dolmen is, or can you take a guess what it is? It's actually this rock structure right here in the middle. And a dolmen is where you have two rocks, okay, these rocks here and here, and then you have a larger rock that goes across the top. So it's basically a little shelter. So this would be open. So maybe it's a little dolmen, it's a dolmen for critters or little animals to have shelter in the winter time. This is another one of Caspar Friedrich's paintings. I just think it's amazing. It's called Mountain Peak with Drifting Clouds. And it almost looks like it's like a mountain with little ice sculptures at the peak of the mountain. So do you know what the peak would be? It's the tippy top. And you might think that this is snow, but it's actually clouds, because if you ever go to the top of a high mountain, you're actually up in the clouds because you're up so high. So he's painting the clouds, and that's why you see just the little parts of the trees, because they're hidden so much by clouds. Now, when we begin any landscape, whether it be a landscape painted in the winter time or the summers or spring or fall, most landscapes start with something called the horizon line. And the horizon line basically is a line that you draw across your paper, and that separates the sky from the land. If we didn't have a horizon line in our landscape, we would just have all sky or all land, or our objects would just be floating. So, and when you think about it, horizon lines can be way up high, where you have just a little bit of sky showing and a lot of land, or you can have horizon lines way down low where you just have a little bit of land showing and a lot of sky. Now, the space below the horizon line, so this space down here towards the front of your paper when we're doing a landscape, we call that the foreground. And the space above the horizon line, which usually includes the sky or mountains in the distance here, is called the background. When we draw a landscape, often the objects we draw in the foreground or towards the bottom of our paper are usually larger than objects we draw in the background. If you notice, this tree in the foreground is much larger than this tree here towards the background because it's closer to us. Also, things in the foreground have more detail. So I can see the texture of the bark and the snow on the branches much more than this tree out in the distance. Same with this pine tree. It's drawn much larger than, as you notice, the pine trees here towards the background where the mountains are. That's going to make your landscape drawing look much more realistic.